Hey everyone, today I have something a little bit different for you all. Yesterday I had the great pleasure of talking to Duncan Field, author of the Sidereal Company. Duncan recently commissioned me to create a realistic map and globe render to accompany his book. I think it's fair to say he was pretty happy with the results and asked if we could have a conversation about cartography, world building and storytelling. I found it a really enjoyable discussion, and I'm confident if you found yourself clicking on this video, then you will too. But please let me know if you want to see more content like this by leaving a comment, and don't worry, more tutorials will be coming along very soon. For now, enjoy a bit more eye candy, and then we'll get into the discussion.
Well, listen, Chris, it is a huge pleasure to get to talk with you. You know, as I've been putting together the kind of marketing and the background for my book, The Sidereal Company, when I thought about the prospect of making a map or putting together some sort of support materials for the geography of the story itself, first of all, I got very overwhelmed. But as someone who loves maps and cartography, kind of as an enthusiast, I've come across your work online. And when I reached out and you were open to doing this, I just thought this is the perfect person to help me with my problem. So it's a huge pleasure to talk with you today.
No, thank you. And yeah, no, it's really nice to get a chance to actually speak to one of the authors like this. Like, you know, I get commissions come in, and you can tell people are always like really passionate about their worlds and their stories and things like that. And yeah, so I'm really excited to kind of get to talk to you today.
Yeah, and I have to say, when I saw for the first time kind of my continent, I was blown away. Yeah. Partly because what I gave you, you know, had some detail, but was not the most specific thing in the world. And again, I thought, you know, if I invest as much time into this as I would like to do it myself, my story would never be done. I would still be, you know, sitting with paper and pen and rulers and everything, and it wouldn't look a third as good, and it would take probably 100 times as long. So it's been a huge pleasure and a privilege to have the end result. I'm so curious how you got into this, because I came across your work, I believe, on Reddit. It immediately stands out, both because it looks amazing and realistic, but it's also artistic. Like the coloring, there's a lot of intention behind it. Mm-hmm. What drew you to making maps and cartography?
Yeah, I mean, very much. I'm just really deep down the rabbit hole at this point. I think it started off, so 2020, it was lockdown. Mm-hmm. And my friend said, hey, Chris, you've wanted to play D&D for a while. Like, can you be tempted to join this like online game we're running? I was like, yeah, okay. Played as a player, loved it. Wanted to try being a DM. Immediately thought, I'm going to build my own world, and saw that people were building maps, downloaded Wonderdraft. And it's quite interesting hearing you say about you know, the sort of the aesthetic of the maps and things like that, because I've always, like, I am someone who really cannot draw, whether it's I cannot for the life of, like, nothing looks the way I want it to look, like if I'm drawing kind of by hand or, you know. But I've always been into things like photography and, you know, eventually things like Blender and stuff like that, and as a way of kind of using techie programs to get what I like rather than kind of hand-eye coordination. The specific jump to kind of what led to my process now was actually to be able to print this map that's behind me. So this, I really wanted to 3D print a map, and we were playing the like Icewind Dale, like Rime of the Frost Maiden. Campaign. I thought, how cool would it be to have like a 3D printed relief? And I kind of like was just doing a lot of research online, lots of Googling, and came across this idea of this program Gaia that you can essentially put something in a fairly vague input, and then actually kind of through simulation and things like that get something quite realistic looking. And so it sort of, yeah, that's kind of how it started. Got to the point of kind of creating a few maps as STL files for 3D printing, and of course, while if you're making the 3D, you might as well add the color as well, right? and I started posting these on Reddit. Be like, oh look, I've made Barovia, or I've made like Icewind Dale, and the response from people was just kind of like, how did you do this? And I've been trying to kind of like type Reddit threads of everything. I thought, you know what, it would just be easier to make a YouTube video. And then that pretty much took me to where we are today.
That's such a funny story, because there are so many authors and artists who have similar starts where essentially it boils down to, I tried D&D and it got a little out of hand. And it's a time-honored tradition. That's what happened to me as well. So yeah, just really cool. And I have to say, when I came across your work for the first time, it might have been in map making subreddit or world building or something like that. And the thing I love about Reddit, like one of the things that I think is its strength, there's always such a diversity of entry points for people. And it's the same with writing subreddits and editing. Some people who are submitting work for review or just want to share something exciting that they've done, they're just starting out. They are, it's a first draft. It's someone with pencil, crayons, and paper, and they're drawing a map. And you don't know if this person is 13 years old or 70 years old. And it's being able to like be a part of their journey and encourage people and provide feedback is really cool. And I have to say, when I came across your work for the first time, it was likely in that context of like someone has created something with, pencil, crayon, and pens, and then you see like a 3D rendered globe, and it's like, oh my gosh, like, this is like, it's breathtaking, truly. And when you sent me for the first time one of those renders of my continent, I was blown away, not only because of how it looks, and it looks so appropriate to the story, it looks real, but also like my story is about people who are essentially astronomers, people who spend a lot of time studying the stars. And I just thought, well, like, what a delight this would be for the characters in my story to see their planet, because they spend so much time looking at the night sky and trying to draw power from all of these different sources. And it's such a recent thing, like our ability to see our planet. And I just think my characters, they would like weep if they saw this. It's like so beautiful objectively and aesthetically, and then thematically I'm like, I know they're not real people, but if they were, I wish they could see this, because it would be so wonderful for them.
No, absolutely. And honestly, like with the globe renders, like this was, I guess, like another rabbit hole of like realism, right? Like, because I think, and again, like going back to like why Reddit's really good as well. It kind of started off as I'll post some work, and then like getting some feedback around like, oh, actually, it kind of looks in a bit like an uncanny valley, and some of my earlier work did kind of look almost diorama like. And it took me quite a while to like sort of explore as to like why does it look like that, and kind of you start to realize about like how scale is important, and how little that you can really kind of see like mountains really, unless you're like you're looking at kind of like a smaller area. So that kind of like led to this natural conclusion of like, oh well, if we really want it to look real, we need to kind of put it on a globe. And honestly, with your map, I was just so excited to get a globe render of it. It was one of these worlds that I thought it just really deserved it. It looked, if I may say so myself, those globe renders look pretty good.
They're beautiful, and you just kept sending like a link or a message to be like, oh well, I was having fun, so here's one more. I was just like, it's so cool to see things made real, because I've spent so many hours picturing what happens in the city and with these people, and it's just it truly blew me away. I think I'm curious about your intuition, because when I saw the map and the globe render, certainly of Renske and everything you did for me, I felt like this is real. This feels real. I'm curious how much, I guess, artistic intuition comes into it for you. Like, I think, when I think about writing, there's a sense when I name something, or if I read something someone else has written, and I've helped edit, a lot of other people's stories or books. Sometimes you read something and you go, "That's real." Like that has something in it that reflects some sort of reality. I believe this. And sometimes that's because of how it's named, or the style in which it's written, or the way characters behave. Do you have a similar sense of seeing something that you've produced and you go, "Okay, that's like, that has it. Whatever that's called, it has it"?
Yeah, so actually I've spent a lot of time learning about plate tectonics. Even to the point that a little side project of mine right now is writing some software to simulate plate tectonics. And it's one of these things where this is like the ultimate kind of depth of the rabbit hole.
Yes.
There's a lot of kind of like world building, like people who, they want to write their story and they're simulating millions of years of plate tectonics and things like that instead. It would be too much for like a commission to do a full like plate tectonic kind of history sort of rebuilding, where you take a supercontinent, you break it up and you track mountain ranges and things like that. But if you understand it, you get a feel for like what continents should look like. And I think one of the things that I really liked working on this project was the fact that, you started with a description and I love, this is my favorite kind of project to work on, is it's where you start with a feeling of what the map should evoke, and you have an idea of like, this is what the landscape's going to be like, here's why from a story point of view. Like, there was certain kind of the coastline was going to be really key for this project. So that, along with some real world examples as well, like kind of, here's like what I'm imagining it could be like, it's like, when compared to real life. So that really helps. And then it's just a case of like combining what the things that I know about plate tectonics and kind of climate simulation and things like that, combining that with those feelings that you kind of portrayed, that you wanted to evoke in your kind of your description, makes me a very, very happy cartographer. Because to the point now actually that I've really raised the price if you want your rivers to be in very specific places.
So I think what you were saying was something along the lines of like raising the price for commissions that have very specific placements for rivers, because I assume that's different from your process now, which is a bit more naturalistic. Is that fair?
Absolutely. I think this is one of the things, it's almost a cliche in cartography of like, oh, your rivers aren't realistic. And this was one of the things that I really like about Gaia, the software that I use, is the fact that it actually calculates where your rivers are going to go. So it will look at the kind of where your mountains are, your regions where they're going to get more rainfall. You can also direct it, give it kind of like some hint where you think the kind of the headwaters will form. But then it's a simulation. It's looking at the kind of looking at the slopes. It will carve through the terrain as well. So it actually will create valleys and things like that. Very nice way of getting something realistic, but a real pain if someone has a very specific place that they want their river.
Right. Yeah, and this is exactly why I was so excited to meet you and for this to work out, because I've been in some of those threads. I know splitting rivers is like a classic, first timer pitfall, and I'm sure people have hundreds of hours of experience looking and like researching far beyond what I've done. Can instantly see when you see a map what sort of tropes or common pitfalls people are falling into. And this is why I'm so thankful, you're here and you have the eye and the intuition, but also just the experience. Because I remember the first time I came across a thread where people were talking about plate tectonics, And I'm trying to write a book. This is my second attempt, and it went much better than the first. And I had this moment of like, oh, if I step into this, I'm cooked. Like, this book is never coming out. I'm going to be here for the next 10 years. And whatever I produce, it might look great, but like, this is just because I'm coming from a different perspective and a different end goal. This is in service to something. And I think ultimately, the setting and the world that's being built is being built to serve a particular story that centers around a particular character. And the amount of time I need to spend on the character and the prose and the editing, I just, if I took that step, I wouldn't be here. Yeah. And this book wouldn't exist. And, I'd still be having fun, but my kind of innermost goal being the book and the story. I think it was a smart call, even if, it would be cool to kind of get in the weeds and kind of figure out how the sausage is made, essentially.
Yeah.
So it's just so fascinating to talk to someone who's taken those steps, because that is your interest. It's really cool to hear you talk about that, just because when I saw plate tectonics for the first time, I went, okay, this is a red flag for me. I can't do this, because I'm never going to leave.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you wait, be salt deposits and where different metal types are in different parts. Yeah, it's it is obviously its own field of its, it's a field of its own. So I think it's one of those things. It's like you want that balance, right? Like it's really cool to bring these ideas in as a tool and perhaps inspiration, and but absolutely don't get lost in it. Yeah, well, I guess reach out to me and I can help you on that journey.
Exactly. You bring in the experts. When I think about my story and the city where it's initially based, Renske, I pitched this to you as like a great southern port that controls, the flow of trade around Southern Cape, like a very dangerous passage. And so what that means for the city's kind of culture and its importance is that a lot of great companies and nations will kind of house important warehouses or officials there to negotiate trade around the Cape. The city itself becomes more important, but also very diverse. And with that come all sorts of trappings. It's known for something kind of, fancy and renowned in a university, but it's also very infamous for gaming houses, casinos, because when a lot of very important people with a lot of money gather, they find very inventive ways to lose it.
Yep.
And so that creates this culture and this place where there's a lot of stuff happening. There's a lot of high culture things. There's a lot of low culture things. There's danger. There's violence and intrigue. And I think that's such an interesting place to start a story. And also trying to set it in like a moment of change where, things are getting colder. Southern ice is moving north. And even just the concept of putting a place like that in the far south, I found interesting, because talking about common tropes, a lot of fantasy still kind of is set in this sort of like pseudo medieval Europe where north is cold, south is hot. The great powers live in the north and usually the west, and the east is seen as this sort of mystical, place. And it brings in a lot of that sort of like, cultural norms or stereotypes that we have or have had in the recent past. And I wanted to do something a little different where, south is cold and that's where the great ice is. And it's trying to, it's not like a great revelation or a great innovation or anything, but there are small ways of trying to make something feel a little different.
Yeah.
That signal to the reader that this world is slightly different than our own. And like I said, they're not big innovations. These aren't great ideas, but they are things and like world building anchors that you stack enough of that create a sense of something specific. Because that's essentially where stories go to die, is when things are generic. And so the more things that you can signal that are specific to this place, the more, at least to me and to my personal taste, the more real it feels.
Yeah, no, I think there was a few things from that description about it being quite far south and obviously being a cape, and to the point that like you could, imagine like a previous ice age kind of carving out these fjords and things like that, and like, so when we think about kind of like where Renske is and how there was that quite like an obvious like natural harbor, and you know, you kind of imagine that being just carved out of the earth by glaciers many thousands and thousands of years ago. I think it's picking obviously you have a story, and then it's like trying, you know, I guess part of my job in this process is like trying to work backwards and work out kind of like from a geology point of view what could like help kind of create these features, and then that can help like guide me, I guess, a little bit in terms of like how am I going to create these
yeah it's so fascinating, and it's so amazing to see the end result, because, you know, part of what I sent you was feeling and you know, like atmosphere with some specifics around, you know, far south and all of what we talked about, and then for the end result to match that feeling so well, I just think is like a testament to you and your intuition and skills. So it was amazing to see. I'm curious to hear what you think in terms of the role that maps, cartography, things like that play to story, because I know I have my particular view. I'm curious where that lies for you.
Yeah, I think like I say, I think it's an opportunity to kind of give context to a story. And I say that this next part as someone who's never written a story. I'm not a writer, but I absolutely, you know, from my like D&D campaign days, it almost kind of like helps make sure things make sense. You know, just even if it's like something basic like travel times and things like that. But yeah, like just generally being able to use the kind of features of the terrain to kind of help understand how a certain region might be. Like if you do have these like rough coastlines with lots of caves and things like that, then it's going to be a smuggler's paradise. If you have this like really isolated island, then you could imagine there's lots of, you know, like legends or, you know, stories being told amongst the local population about what might live there and things like that. You could certainly see it from the point of view of, like I say, the landscape is there first, and then the people, the inhabitants just live there.
Yeah. Like, yeah, the story is based, you know, stories derived from characters live in a culture, and the culture is informed or like shaped by place.
Exactly.
I think in a story that makes sense, and especially, you know, when you think about fantasy or science fiction, where you are inventing whole worlds, that place needs to make sense, or the connection maybe between culture and place, I think, is really important.
Yeah.
And depending on the kind of story it is, I think you can play on that a little bit, you know, because like the inclusion of something like magic or supernatural forces or whatever, judging a world by our kind of, I'll say, ordinary standards, I think there's a little bit of room for play when you include something like magic that sadly doesn't exist here. I think there's room to play with, and there's an element of strangeness that I think can give a place life. But I completely agree. Like for me, this sort of place-based approach is necessary, but maybe not like sufficient for the story. Like for my purposes, I need to write the story up. Something I very much enjoy most of the time. I think I feel maybe a bit bad saying this, but thematically, so the reason why I was so excited, you know, I love the story I've written, and the Sidereal Company, the name of the novel is based on this organization. You know, this is a world that has very low magic. Magic is rare, it's obscure, it's very difficult. Not everyone can do it. And the people who can do it are often found by the Sidereal Company, this group that studies the stars. They derive their abilities from stars through like this brutal process of study. But they live in this place, these company halls that are outside of kind of normal time and space. It's like a liminal space they're able to access through these doors. And when they are in their halls, they don't age.
Oh, wow.
Which is sort of I think, an interesting kind of story conceit. allows for people to have very long lifespans as long as they don't leave. And so people leave to go outside to study stars, to find new powers. But there has to be a big motivation for that, because every night that you spend outside studying the stars is one night closer to death, when you could be inside your cozy halls, your magical powers that make food taste better, make everything feel better. Or you're using your powers to charge extravagant fees to powerful people to solve their problems in sometimes very destructive or inventive ways. And I picture this as like a very sometimes violent process, sometimes absurd. And you can imagine what, this is partly derived from my experience, studying in school, grad school, meeting very strange people with very specific interests, and just imagining what would they be like if they had done that for 100 years or 200 years. Yeah. And what if the thing that they were studying was more powerful or meaningful than tax law or whatever the case is. And so Renske as a city is like an entry point. It's set 60 years after the Sidereal Company withdrew from the world, almost like establishing a conclave because they need to elect a new leader. And in classic fashion, with people who live very long lives, 60 years passes very quickly. That's all they're doing for 60 years. They're living, they're eating, they're trying to come to an agreement as to who should lead the Sidereal Company. And it takes that long because they are all very difficult, absurd, particular people. And they're not able to come to a decision. And so they open up their doors, they check their watches, they go, oh wow, it's been a minute. And they come back to look for new members, to change the balance of votes, to hopefully elect a new leader. And so that's kind of the premise of the story. And it's important that Renske is a real place, because Saskia needs to be drawn into this world, this kind of secondary world. And thematically, it's important that she loses touch with a place that feels real. And so seeing it on the globe, seeing it on the map, I think is so cool, because you need that feeling to contrast with her life as she enters these halls and starts to lose her connection to this sort of primary setting, both through her physical place, because she is in this endless series of hallways, this sort of labyrinth, but also temporally, where she loses track, like a normal track of time, because she is no longer in this sort of ordinary lifespan. So I was just like, I was so thrilled to see it, because the more it feels real, the more that loss or that contrast feels real, which is kind of the main thrust of the story thematically. So I was over the moon. I am curious to hear a little bit about how you approached building the map for my book, The Sidereal Company, because it's a bit of a black box for me. I know I've seen your tutorials on the programs you use and all that, but I'm curious, maybe how you approached this particular project, just because I'm so enamored with the result.
Yeah, I mean, I think I spent a little bit of time on Google Earth. I absolutely love, I spend a lot of time on Google Earth. I just love going to like different parts of the world and just kind of like looking at the sort of the shapes of the countries and the continents, and trying to kind of like understand. You start to get more of a feel for like how tectonic forces like really like shear and twist and kind of crumple up the land. So yeah, I like to start a project with especially when it's one like this, where I've kind of got like here's a feeling and here's like some features that I want, but I don't have like a sketch of an exact landmass. Yeah. So yeah, it's a case of kind of like looking around, looking for other places that kind of would give a similar sort of feeling, and then it really actually it starts off in Photoshop, and I start off with a blank white canvas, and I just put a big black hole in the middle of it. And I actually just kind of use like the smudge tool in Photoshop to start like pulling and pushing things around. And I feel like actually doing that to kind of get like an initial shape really helps my kind of inability to just sit there and draw the exact line of what it is that I want to see.
Yeah.
And it's really about kind of building a guide for myself at first of like, here's kind of like the vague continent shape. And I think kind of like very early on in the process, like I sent over a very basic kind of like, how does this for like look and feel? And it was completely different from what we had, but just in terms of like the color and like how much height and the scale, it did a good job. But yeah, I really need to have that kind of like full process of going into Photoshop and really kind of like, I'll often draw myself some guides about where like plate boundaries might be and things like that, just to kind of help with that kind of like uncanny valley feeling, right? Like you get that kind of gut feeling when you see something, even if you don't know what it is, even if you haven't kind of like read loads of books on cartography and you're not an expert, you'll look at something and you'll think, it just feels off. So I think like, really starting from those sort of like first principles helps sort of sell that realism.
You're almost oil painting, it sounds like. You know, you're putting it on the page and you are pulling it, and you know, they're almost brush strokes.
Yeah, well, exactly. Like it is kind of like, just pulling things around with like kind of like textured brushes in Photoshop, creating that initial shape, and then kind of creating that coastline using a set of brushes in Photoshop that are actually derived from real kind of like bits of coastline and landmass and things like that. Actually, I should say, is from another artist, Josh Goff. He's put together like a real nice set of work. And the mountains as well, based on real mountains and real mountain ranges and things like that, to kind of to give the most like realistic starting point for mountain ranges. Gaia, you can create things that look pretty good, like get you 80% of the way there. But again, in that like quest for realism, I found that actually starting with real mountain ranges gives you just nicer results.
Yeah, of course.
And yeah, I mean, I can actually, let me see if I can share my screen. I can even perhaps show a bit of Gaia. So here we have the kind of the final product of what kind of Gaia outputs, and we made some globe renders as well, but that was in Blender, where we have added the clouds and things like that and the lighting. But really, kind of where we're starting is with something like this. So this is the image that I create in Photoshop. So this is called a height map. This is essentially the brightness of each pixel of this image denotes how high that point is in terms of elevation. And if I switch this, in fact, actually, I'll just click on to the next thing along. You can kind of see this now in a more of a sort of three-dimensional view. And it's quite rough initially, like what you get. But you know, it definitely is kind of like recognizable as like mountain ranges. Obviously there's a lot more like texture to the ground in general. All of that texture has been warped as well to kind of like I mean, here you can kind of see with the shape, right? You can see that this plate here would be kind of like rotating round, and it creates this sort of like trail. So those, all of those kind of like details of the ground would sort of be affected by those forces too. So this is kind of like the starting point for Gaia. I kind of added in like a continental shelf as well. I just thought that would be kind of give a bit more visual interest to have sort of shallow areas as well as the sort of deeper areas. But then it's really about kind of simulating erosion, essentially. So what the software will do is, simulate the process of like tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, even millions of years of rainfall, and what effect would that have on the land. And you can see, as we kind of then go to like the sort of the eroded view, how that kind of makes quite a big difference.
Yeah, it's a lot smoother.
Yeah, exactly. It's sort of taking sediment away from the mountains and the peaks, and then like kind of filling in the lowlands. And it's obviously it's quite a procedural thing, right? Like you can't get exactly, if you've got an idea in your mind, getting something perfect and exact is quite difficult, which is why it's quite nice to have like a bit of freedom. And and then it's a case of, like I say, kind of calculating rivers. It doesn't know where the sea begins, so it will kind of like continue off into the sea, which you then can add in and set your sea level, there's kind of little touches that perhaps you wouldn't have noticed, but like I have a way of calculating kind of like where perhaps like river sediment would go into the ocean. And so this is again something from my time just like looking in like satellite images, and you can sometimes see at the mouths of rivers the sort of the sediment kind of coming out into the ocean a bit. So in fact, if I skip ahead, you can kind of see like that's what like this is. You've got quite a bit of sediment gathering.
It's so beautiful, yeah, and such attention to detail, and it those are the things that a layman like myself won't consciously notice. Although I will admit, having spent more time than I would otherwise care to admit looking at this, just because I'm so fascinated. But those are all the touches that help make a place feel real, which is novel in itself, but then in service of a story, so important for both the initial sense of place, but then thematically losing some of that sense of place as you are transported to this sort of secondary place or world. It's amazing to see, and amazing to see all of the work and the thought and the intuition that goes into it.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is it. Like, it's an incredibly powerful piece of software, where you can solve problems in many different ways, and actually the primary use of this is more for like the video game industry. And
interesting. Yeah,
so like and like CG in general, like computer graphics, when you think about any kind of like open world video games and things like that where there's terrain, this is the sort of program that's been used to kind of create those mountains and things like that. Not many people, I guess, kind of like thought to kind of use it for like larger scale maps like this. So yeah, I mean, it is complicated, but it's these like little, like you say, those little attention to detail things. There will not be like a feature necessarily that will just solve that problem for you, but it's I don't know, it's just a chance to like nerd out and be creative and figure out like, how can I capture this? Or I mean, for example, previous piece of work I did was to see if I can calculate population density maps. So kind of like take all the features of like, access to a river along the coast, and you're not going to build on like land that's too sloped, and all of these different things. You can then kind of like predict. I'd love to see if Renske's picked up here. I can imagine it being quite a favorable, coming out as like a predicted place that would be very favorable.
Yeah, it's so fascinating to see. This is such like I want to show this to 14-year-old Duncan. Just because this is sort of unimaginable to me. And yeah, just a beautiful view into the science, but also it's such a balance of science and art, I find, because there's the, as you say, nerd in you that digs into the background of this, but there's also a sense of aesthetic and color and light, and certainly when you get to the render, it's just, it's beautiful to see. It certainly made my month when I saw it. Just to see something brought to life is quite extraordinary.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's the favorite part of what I do. Everybody I've kind of worked with has had that sort of similar kind of feeling when they see something like the output of these maps, and to the point that actually I won't stop until the person is 100% happy, because honestly, that's the bit that I care about the most. Is kind of producing something that has that wow factor for the person. And likewise, actually, if there's a commission that I feel I don't think I can achieve the vision, I just won't take it. Because I want more stories like this.
Hey, as a people pleaser, I understand you completely. It's nice to hit that moment for sure. I'm thrilled with the results. It's helping to bring the story to life. It's helping motivate what can be a very tedious process, which is edits and formatting and all that stuff. So when I saw it, I was blown away for its own sake, and then also to consider, what might my characters think of this, and what a rare experience to look on an alien planet or a new world. It's just it's so unique. It's stunning, and I'm so thrilled for it.
I'm very pleased.
Well, thank you so much for kind of talking through this, and it's cool to hear where you come from, because I see so many parallels from my own inspiration for diving into stories. And I have to say, it's so interesting seeing the software and the steps involved, and it's so great to validate that I should go nowhere near this, because no one will hear from me.
Be careful, here be
for
dragons.
A decade. Exactly. You talk about Wonder Draft as a gateway drug. It's like, that sounds about right to me.
It's interesting. It feels like perhaps there was we took two separate paths. I chose option A, the cartography route, and you chose the writing route. But thank you. It's been fascinating, kind of like having a chance to talk to you and hear more about your story. And I already want to go back and make some more renders now for this one. Now I've heard all this stuff, I'm like, I can. We'll have a think.
No, thank you for your time, and thanks again for everything you've done. It's so cool to see. And like I said, 14-year-old Duncan wouldn't believe that something like this is possible. And I certainly think if I attempted something like this beyond the monumental drop in quality, I think my computer would also explode. It's I assume it comes at a heavy cost.
I have invested. This is it. It's all an investment in the hobby. This is not a viable business model at all.
I understand that completely. I understand that completely. But thank you so much, and so good to chat and get to know you a little bit, and thanks again.
Thank you.